Now, okay. I'm very pleased to introduce today Ryan Ruffaner, who is a member of Bay Area Church, and he's been a Citizens Climate Lobby volunteer for three years and a co-leader for the League City Division for over 1 year. He says he's been concerned about climate change since he was a kid, but he had trouble imagining a positive future for our planet before getting involved in CCL. And then after helping to feed and shelter Hurricane Harvey refugees, he realized he had to get involved. And I'm sure you all have noticed by now that on the back of your order of service is information. And so please use that for reference as needed. Ryan.
Good morning, y'all. Thank you for having me today. This actually is not the first time I've been here. This was the place that I first had my very first CCL meeting at. The Citizens Climate Lobby had an event here a long time ago. And like she said, I was concerned about climate change, but I didn't really know where to begin. So when I came here, ironically, it started having we had one of the extreme weather events that's become more and more recent lately. So while we were talking about the effects of climate change, it started raining and it started ponding. And then there was talk about, are we going to get flooded in? So this is actually me coming back here is almost like a sort of a homecoming, because this is where I first found out about Unitarian Universalism and the Citizens Climate Lobby. So it's good to be back, and thank you for having me. So today I am not going to focus on the nitty-gritty statistics of climate change. If I do that, we will be here all day. I'm also not going to focus on doom and gloom. I think we get enough of that in the media as it is, especially around climate change. I think hope and optimism, particularly hope in action, is a much more powerful force for good than despair. So today I want to talk to you about the Citizens Climate Lobby and our solution called the Energy, Innovation, and Carbon Dividend Act. It's a bit of a mouthful. But basically who we are is a nonpartisan group of volunteers who work on affecting climate change on 5 levels of society, I guess you could say. So there are 5, we call them levers. And these 5 levers are grassroots, which you hear about a lot these days, grass tops, media, lobbying, and group development. So this organization, Citizens Climate Lobby, which has around 600 groups worldwide and 190,000 supporters. We primarily focus on these 5 levers because, as our late founder Marshall Saunders said, who sadly is no longer with us, we are betting the ranch on relationships. And we meet with anybody, anywhere, no matter what their political affiliation may be, no matter what policies they support, no matter what they post on Twitter, we will meet with them. Okay, so grassroots, let's start there. Grassroots are ordinary people like you and me, people concerned about climate change, but maybe they don't know where to begin. Grass tops are leaders of the community. So religious or spiritual leaders, business owners, community leaders, people who are the movers and shakers in their communities. Then there is media. This is traditional media. This is social media. So for example, if we see an article in the Houston Chronicle in any way pertaining to climate change, we will write a letter to the editor about it to frame it in a positive, hopeful way and to advocate for our solution to it. We will also write opinion editorials to help focus the climate change issue around, again, solutions. We don't want to spread doom and gloom and make people panic and then say, okay, well, now I'm nervous and this whole thing is incredibly daunting, but what do we do about it? You know, which is oftentimes where the talk about climate change goes, is we're concerned, but what do we do? Lobbying is another part of what we do. It's such a big part of what we do that is literally in our name. What this means is, again, that we will meet with representatives, no matter who they are or what their policies or political position is. When I say that we are a partisan organization. I don't mean that we don't have our own political leanings or that we don't vote. What I mean is that we see the inherent human worth in every single person. We see them in spiritual terms. You might say that we see everyone as having a spark of the divine. In secular terms, you might just say that we believe that everyone is created equal. This is one of the fundamental values that we have. We bring it into every meeting. And as we are trained, if you cannot find something to sincerely appreciate about the person you are meeting with, then you should not meet with them. And this doesn't mean, again, that you agree with everything they say, but it means that you find something you do agree with sincerely, and you tell them that. If I may get off in a bit of a tangent here, I think that a lot of times our political representatives, despite how they may, try to act in front of the cameras, in many ways, they're actually a lot like customer service representatives, which means they have people constantly blowing up their phone, telling them how bad of a job they're doing, how they're ruining people's lives, and how they should be ashamed of themselves. And how dare you this, and how dare you that? And how refreshing would it be if you were in that position and somebody looked you in the eyes and said sincerely, thank you. Thank you for what you were doing for me and my community. That is one of the ways that we are so effective at the congressional level. Sincere gratitude and appreciation. The last lever that we use to affect change is an internal facing one. It is group development. We got to make sure that we are strong and cohesive as a group for all these other levers to properly work and to pass our solution. So what is our solution? Our solution is the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, which is currently in the House right now. It's up for voting right now. And what it means is essentially we will put a carbon fee, not a tax, on carbon emissions at the outset of the emission. This is incredibly important because we don't want people who are least able to foot the bill of climate change, of carbon emissions, I should say, to be stuck with a check. So since the fee is proportional to the emission and it's at the outset, this means that big fossil fuel companies, chemical factories, refineries will pay a higher price than ordinary people like you and me who put fossil fuels in our car. Granted, I would like to get an electric car one day, but I don't have the money for it. So the carbon fee is then paid back to people as dividends. Now, this is incredibly important because there are three things that make a climate change bill great. One, it has to be effective. It has to create large scale change quickly. It has to be passable, and it must be unlikely to be repealed, because the best climate change bill, if it can't be passed, it's not going to help. And if it does get passed, but then it's repealed by the next administration, it's not going to do a lot of good in the long term. And we know that a bill with a tax in it on companies or on people will not pass a Republican's desk. And so this will not work if we advocate for a tax instead of a fee. It will be blocked, it won't pass, or it will be repealed by a new administration. Another great thing about this fee is that it's paid directly back to the people. Instead of going into a government coffer and used for whatever purpose they see fit, it is paid back to the individual to spend however they want. It empowers them with personal choice, which is good in many ways. One, because people like getting money. You just think about the stimulus checks. I love that. And two, because no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, I think we can all agree there are some things the government spends money on that we don't agree with, whether that's military or immigration or healthcare, whatever it is. The ability to allow people to spend the money on whatever they see fit allows everybody to support the bill. This bill, I should mention, also the carbon fee escalates over time because we need to hit two primary deadlines. One, we have to reduce our carbon emissions by 50% by the year 2030. This is important because the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or the IPCC, estimates that if we don't reduce our carbon emissions by 50% by 2030, we will feel the worst effects of climate change. This bill can get us there. And this bill will also make us carbon neutral by the year 2050. This escalating bill, I should also mention, is adjustable. So for example, if we're behind our deadline and we really need to make that 2030 deadline, we can ratchet up the price accordingly to ensure that we meet the deadline. Of course, the sooner it's enacted, the better, and we won't have to ratchet it up as much. This bill is also expected to create 2.1 million new jobs in the renewable energy sector, which is important because right now our country is reeling from COVID. Many jobs have been lost, and renewable energy jobs would help people to continue to put food on the table. It would help our economy bounce back from COVID. And at the same time, it would clean up our atmosphere. It would mitigate the worst effects of climate change. Speaking of pollution, this bill, if enacted, is also expected to save around 4.5 million American lives who would normally be sickened by air pollution, by cancerous chemicals put into the air. So this bill is good for our health. It is good for our economy. It is good in empowering individual choice through the dividends and the carbon fee program. It is good in a lot of ways. But let me ask you this, and I do want to get some answers here. What story do you tend to tell yourself around why you're not fully engaging in climate change, right? I'll use myself as an example. So for example, when I was in college, I said that I simply don't have enough time to do it. And then when Hurricane Harvey struck and I found myself volunteering to turn our basketball stadium into a makeshift shelter for climate refugees, and my mom was watching the floodwaters rise outside of our house, threatening the home that we had, well, the house that we had made a home as a family. I realized that even though I thought I didn't have enough time for climate change had more than enough time for me and the people I love. So if I may ask you, what are some of the stories that you tell yourself that keep you from fully engaging around climate change? Is it that you don't have enough time? You don't have enough knowledge? You don't know what specific action opportunities to get involved in? Back, feel hopeless. Okay, that's pretty common. I think because climate change is global, right? We know it's global, and so it feels bigger than all of us, bigger than we can hope to tackle. And one of the ways that I think about it, kind of nerdy, but is I think about the Avengers and superheroes. I love superheroes. I've always loved superheroes since I was a kid. And oftentimes the superheroes, whether the Avengers or the Justice League, they're faced with either a global threat or a cosmic threat. And even though the threat is huge, they ask themselves, what can I do individually? And they realize that they are not alone. It is maybe bigger than one of us, but is not bigger than all of us. And we can say that, we got ourselves into this mess. And yes, that's true. But because we got ourselves into this mess, we are also more than capable of getting ourselves out of this mess. And another thing I would say, because I have a tendency towards perfectionism, right? And so I'm like, well, I've got to do this and I've got to do this and all of it has to be perfect. And that's not the case. When we fight climate change, we do it together. No single one of us has to shoulder the entire burden or the responsibility for solving. We do it together. I do a little bit here, you do a little bit there. Before we know it, it's solved. I don't know if that helps, but I know despair is a very common response to climate change. I saw somebody else had their hand up. Oh, yeah, I'll leave that. Mm. Mm. Yes, okay, that's a good question. I don't know if Zoom picked it up. I'm sorry, I should have also. Yeah. Her comments were that she wants to write to Randy Weber, Ted Cruz. I don't remember if you mentioned Cornyn, yeah, but you don't know if it'd do any good. Typically, when we meet with Republican officials about climate change, there's a couple of things that happen. One, when we approach it non-judgmentally, and we We will ask them, what do you need to hear from us to change your mind? And so we ask them an open-ended question. So instead of saying, you need to do this, and they go, no. We'll say, what do you need from us? And usually they'll say, more information, or I need more of my constituents to agree with this. So then what we do is, okay, you need more of your constituents. Which constituents? Well, I'm not hearing it from the average voter. Okay, so then we focus on grassroots. I'm not hearing it from faith leaders. Okay, then we focus on grass tops. I need to hear more about it in the media. Okay, then we focus on media. Another thing that I've noticed is that oftentimes politicians, they are, a lot of times they hear from the people, like for example, on climate change, they're hearing from a lot of people who work fossil fuel jobs. And those people are afraid that they're going to lose their jobs and their livelihood. So one of the things that we do when we talk about our bill is we say, hey, look, this is a steadily increasing carbon fee. It's not a tax, right? Because the people you mentioned, they won't vote for a tax. It's a fee that's paid back to the people, and it allows fossil fuel companies to adapt over time. So it's not a hard deadline like, no, right now we are enacting a huge fee and that's it. And all of your constituents are going to lose their jobs, because then they won't vote for that. So we assure them that the concerns they have for their constituents are real, but this bill will not interfere with that. And then there's one more thing that we usually talk to about Republicans. Blanking out at the moment, but we emphasize, one, that it's a fee, not a tax. That helps. That we do care about their constituents. And then, the other thing is that I believe you might be surprised at how the winds are turning, so to speak. So for example, Ted Cruz, I believe John Cornyn as well, I'm not sure about Randy Weber, recently joined the Growing Climate Solutions Act. And I could not believe it, I'll be honest. I was like, what? They did? But I was pleasantly surprised. People have a way of surprising you sometimes. And in this case, the tides are turning. And there are, I believe from one of our studies, it was 60% of young conservatives now believe climate change is real and it's human caused and we have to do something about it. It's great. It's great. And that also means that the Republican Party, the people who would normally vote against these sorts of things, are realizing that if they want to secure the future of their party, they have to act on climate change. Whether it's our solution or a different solution, they have to act on climate change. So, thank you. You had your hand up. I'll get you.
I know the concern is, especially in Texas, it's just big oil leaders with the great corporations. They kind of fuel tax for the Republican Party. So
Yeah.
So what would be done to try? Obviously, you're Jeff Bezos of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, right. Basically, there are a lot of people who profit from oil and who are also contributing to the crisis, contributing to political campaigns. What do we do about that? Bribing. Well, when it comes to big corporations like that, I think the solution is to encourage them, not out of the goodness of their heart, although you can apply to that too, but to appeal to their profit margin. Right now, the European Union has started clamping down on carbon emissions. I don't remember the exact name of the legislation they've passed. And a lot of other places, even China, is moving forward with clean, renewable energy. So if we show them, hey, look, not only is acting on climate change a good thing to do for the planet and for our health, but is also incredibly profitable, then we can influence them where they're able to be influenced the most. Right now, there are a lot of these oil companies who are working on clean, renewable energy. Is it a majority of what they do? No, sadly not yet. We hope it will be, but until then, we will appeal to them by through their wallets, so to speak. Yes.
What are your thoughts on the
Of electric cars? Mm, mhm. Yeah, no, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so you want to know about the electric cars? There are straws. Mhm. Yeah, that's a good question. So what he asked was how do we put pressure on local businesses to be more ecological in their projects? Is that so again, I think it boils down to the bottom line of profit margin. So for example, electric cars, I unfortunately cannot afford one right now. Let's take electric cars as an example. They're a bit expensive. So if we ask Amazon, let's say, which is a ton of money, to switch their fleet to electric cars, they can absolutely do that. But if we ask a mom and pop shop to switch their fleet, the one car that they have, maybe the two cars that they have, to electric vehicles, will they be able to afford that? Probably not. So in the case of Amazon, we can encourage them. I think we can encourage people to be ecological to the level that they can afford it, because we don't want to put people out of business by encouraging them to be ecological. Now, what you said about the straws, that's a great point. I think one of the things that we can do as individuals, so for example, if you go into a place like Starbucks, I've seen disposable straws there, but let's say that they didn't have disposable straws. And you say, hey, it'd be really cool if you guys had disposable straws because it's better for the environment. Then they might say, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. But you could say, hey, can I talk to your manager about this? Or you can call the corporate number. And what would especially help is if you were able to find a vendor for ecological straws, biodegradable straws. So for example, they have some that are like a thick cardboard. I've seen others that are bamboo, which are really freaking cool. I love them. Also, bit of a tangent, but these bamboo straws had a logo on them. So you can also use these bamboo straws to be ecological and to increase your branding. So there are ways to be ecological and make more money. So what I would say is if you're meeting with people like that, then have in your pocket something that essentially says, hey, not only do I think you should do this, but I actually have a vendor that you might want to reach out to that would help you do this. Because a lot of times what happens is somebody will suggest an idea, and this isn't just to businesses, this is in general. Somebody says, oh, you should do this. You go, yeah, I'll check it out. Do you? Not usually, no. So if you do most of the work for them, then they are more likely to do it. And I know sometimes that can seem like, well, why should I have to do the work for them? They're the ones who are using these non-ecological products. But when we keep the end goal in mind, we realize that yes, we'll do a little bit of the work for them, but in the end, we'll get what we want and they'll pollute less. Okay. Yes, this will be the last one. Hmm? Mhm. 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 Gotcha. Okay. Mhm. Gotcha.
And, you know, how do we deal with that? It feels like that's the main way that I'm like not putting my dollars to use. Then I have no choice.
Mhm. Okay, yeah, so to summarize, you were saying over there that one of the best ways to show, let's say, climate consciousness is to spend your money wisely, to spend it on things that don't produce more pollution. And you were saying that it can be hard when you move to a city where, or when you live in an area, let's say, where you can't bike everywhere, you can't walk everywhere, there's a low level of walkability. And when you buy from a store, and let's say for the sake of argument, that's a store where you get the best price and you don't have a lot of money to spend, where they just layer their products in plastic. What do you do then? So the walkability aspect, that's you'd have to talk to your local government about that. You'd have to see where the money is going specifically. Is it going to, for example, in my neighborhood, there'll be a completely flat sidewalk, totally normal, and they'll tear it up and redo it. I don't know if there's something wrong with it that I don't know about, or if they're just like, well, we got to spend some money. So, you know, in that case, you might talk to the government about it and say, hey, look, I want the city to be more walkable. I want there to be bike lanes in general, or, you know, decently wide bike lanes. In terms of packaging, you know, I don't know. I shop at Aldi's. So they don't even have plastic bags there. They have reusable bags. I don't know. I mean, I guess you could look for comparative deals elsewhere, or you could take it up with the management. You know, call their corporate number. And again, the more you supply them with an answer that makes them do less work, the more likely they will be to enact it. So I'm sorry I couldn't be more helpful in that. Okay. But yeah, no more questions, but I can answer it afterwards. Okay, after the talk. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so a lot of these are good concerns. You know, how do you spend your money in an ecological way? How do you encourage people to, let's say, use more electric vehicles without them breaking their bottom line? How do you overcome the shadow of despair that so often falls on us when we deal with climate change? These are complicated questions. They're deep questions. And I'm happy to say that the CCL is able to solve a lot of these things. So for example, when it comes to despair, it is harder to feel despair when you are actively working to create a better, more hopeful future, and when you are doing it with other people who share the same mission as you. I don't know about you guys, but oftentimes in Texas, when I talk about climate change, I feel like I'm the only person. And like everybody else is big oil, or at the very least apathetic. And I feel like I'm the only person. So when I go to a CCL meeting and I find other people who are saying, yes, climate change is a problem. Yes, it's real. They're not denying it, and they're working towards a better solution. I feel less alone. It's harder for me to despair. I'm invigorated with hope again. When it comes to electric vehicles, let's say, this bill, in steadily increasing a fee on carbon, will encourage innovation in the renewable energy sector, because renewable energy will become less costly than fossil fuels. All of these things CCL helps with. There are information sessions if you want to know more, to talk to other people about it. If you found yourself talking to somebody about climate change and they say, show me the facts, and you're like, I know it's real, but I don't know how to explain it beyond that, we have sessions that can help you with that. If you feel like you would be more encouraged to act on climate change if you were able to do it with a partner or a friend, somebody to keep you motivated and encouraged, we have groups that do this. We have a happy hour, or if you don't drink, we have coffee and conversation. And we talk, we work, we talk, and we hang out. And if you are not quite sure where to begin, or you have something specifically that you want to improve about your community, we have specific action opportunities so we can show you where to start. And even better than that, we will train you on how to do all of these things. And we will do our best to make sure it aligns with your passion. So for example, I love writing. I'm pretty good at writing. And when I told them that, they said, okay, great. We'll teach you how to write an op-ed, how to write a letter to the editor that gets published. And they were right, they taught me, and it did get published. The Citizens Climate Lobby is a place for all people who want to act on climate change, but either don't know where to begin or are not sure how to specifically go about making a difference that bears fruit. This bill, I believe, is the bill to stop climate change, to reduce our carbon emissions, saving 4.5 million American lives from the reduction in pollution, to create 2.1 million new jobs from new renewable energy jobs. By enacting a carbon fee and dividend, we will put power into people's pockets in the form of monthly dividends. And I should add that from our studies, we estimate that low and middle income people are going to either break even or come out ahead. So we ensure that the people least able to foot the bill will not be left behind. They will not be stuck with a check. This bill can be passed as soon as we can convince people to act on it. Right now, for example, it's in the House. Randy Weber is going to vote for it or against it, and we can sway that opinion. We can do it through the 5 levers, through grass tops, grassroots, media, lobbying, and group development. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you will consider joining the Citizens Climate Lobby. At the very least, maybe coming to one of our meetings, seeing how you like it. Or we have forms here that you can write to Randy Weber, urging him to enact a carbon fee and dividend act. All that we ask is that you do so through the spirit of non-judgment, inclusivity, and seeing everybody as having inherent human worth. And I know that won't be a problem for you guys, because when I came here, I learned all about y'all's values. So yeah, it's a good place. So thank you. And if you have any more questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Else it needs to